Hi everyone, my name is Suma. I'm here with Dr. Dain Heer, Doctor of Chiropractic. He's author of Being You, Changing the World, an international bestseller. He's also a co-creator of Access Consciousness and has appeared on TV several times, including Fox News, Good Morning shows of New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. I greatly appreciate your work and Gary's work. I think you have personally demonstrated to me on how to contribute to this planet.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I've got to say, when I first started doing Access Consciousness, I had the same point of view about it. I looked and I went, wow, there's so much that this offers as a contribution to people. So thank you for getting that. Yeah,
you are like a personal example for me to watch and kind of learn from your example.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I'm being too specific. Can we start by explaining like what is an infinite being? What does it mean to function as an infinite being?
Well, number one, be as specific as you want. And if I can't answer the question, I'll let you know. But number two, the thing about being an infinite being is, like, in a lot of the metaphysical and spiritual work that I did prior to coming to Access Consciousness, they would say, you're an infinite being. When I would say, hey, how do I handle my money problem? You know, I'm really tired of struggling with money. And they say, you're an infinite being, so it's okay. And I'm like, wait a minute, wouldn't an infinite being at least be able to pay rent? Wouldn't an infinite being be happy? You know, and I wasn't asking for much. I just wanted to have some ease and be happy. And so what I realized is most people have no idea what being an infinite being would be. But if you look at an infinite being would know infinitely, they would perceive infinitely, they would receive infinitely, and they would of course be infinite. So it's the perceiving, the knowing, the being, and the receiving that an infinite being has. And so, but what we see functioning around us, it's no wonder that nobody has a concept for that, because nobody around us is functioning from that. You know, we're functioning as hugely finite, hugely limited beings. And one of the things that Access does is it starts to pull apart those limitations that you bought as real and true. So what is actually true for you, which is being an infinite being with infinite choice and infinite possibilities available, starts to actually become your reality, starts to actually become a choice that you have available. You know, for me, once again, I did a lot of personal development work, you know, spiritual, metaphysical, and everything else I could find, psychological. And nobody ever addressed what was true for me as a being. They would tell me about the color of light I needed to swirl through my body to make a connection with the universe, and which was like, well, cool. What about me? Like, where is the actual being that I am involved in this conversation? And most of the time it wasn't. And so what I would love to see is a different conversation where if we recognize that there's something fundamentally greater about us, how do we access that? How do we actually live as that? It's one thing to know that there's something different, you know, or have this idea that there's something different and it's out here, but you can never get there. Well, that's discouraging, you know, that's depressing. And one of the other interesting things is, you know, people talk about their higher self. And for me, I'm like, well, if you keep putting that as your higher self and you're somehow a lesser self or a lower self, that's bullshit. No, you are your higher self. We need to end this separation. So a lot of the concepts that we've been given are really, they're absolute crap. And I say it with such intensity so people will actually listen, you know. I don't really have that much charge on it at this point. But it's like we've been given so many concepts that are designed to create a separation and prove that we're limited. What if we're not? What if we're miraculous? And what if that's the thing we haven't been willing to be?
One of the things I love about your work is that it provides like very practical tools, and it's very rare because it's one thing to understand things metaphysically, but have actual practical tools which you can use every day. It takes you to a whole another level, and I know one of your tools, it talks about uncreating your point of view, and I want you to explain that for people who are new, because when you are lost in your own point of view, you don't even know that you have a certain point of view, and people around you reinforce the same thing.
So true.
How do we get out of it?
Well, there's all kinds of ways, but we have this one tool that we use in Access Consciousness all the time. It's called a clearing statement. And it's got a lot of words to it, but it's basically short form for about 3 pages of material. And rather than read through 3 pages every time, we're like, how can we make this accessible to people in a short amount of time? And what it's about is going back to the point of creation, of wherever you created a limitation and asking it to dissolve. See, the thing about being an infinite being and the thing about the way consciousness works is consciousness always desires more consciousness. If you ask, the consciousness of the universe will contribute to you. And every molecule has consciousness. We just are living in a world where we don't seem to remember that anymore. But what this clearing statement does is if you can get anything you want to ask for, one of the things you can do is you go, okay, because if you look at it, if anybody out there, if they look at something they wanted to change in their lives, and they go to try to change it, and yet it seems like there's these roadblocks in the way. Well, those roadblocks are based on our points of view. Those points of view, we keep thinking are somehow ours. A lot of those are not, first of all. A lot of them are things that we buy from other people. One of the things that we've found in Access is 98%, literally 98% of your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your judgments, your roadblocks, your limited points of view are not yours. They're things that you've picked up from other people growing up or sometimes in other lifetimes. And so these points of view create this sort of like wall around us, and we're in the castle, except the castle's falling apart around us, and we have this wall around the castle so we can't get out to something new and spacious. So what this clearing statement does is it addresses it. So when you come up against one of those roadblocks, you go, okay, so I always put my hands up because that's one of the ways I sense the energy. And people look at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, sorry, I forgot. So what happens is when you get to one of those roadblocks, what you can do is you go, okay, so all the points of view I have creating this, and all the points of view that I bought from other people, and all the points of view I brought into this lifetime, I'm now willing to let all those go. And the way to let it go is to ask to destroy and uncreate it. And people go, destroy? I don't want to destroy. Destruction is bad. I'm like, is destruction of limitation still bad? Or does that actually open up for possibilities? So one of the reasons this roadblock is still in place is because we're not willing to use the creative capacity that destruction of limitation is. So we don't want to have destructive energy, so we hold everything in our lives in place because we don't want to be one of those bad people that destroys. But what you have to look at is, what if you're not one of those bad people? What if you destroying limitation makes you one of those great people that you know you are, that invites more possibilities into the world? And so this is a fundamental conversation that most people don't even realize is, don't even realize this, good English, most people don't even realize needs to be had. And so what we do is, if I'm working with somebody or working with a class, I'll say, will you destroy and uncreate that? And they go, at first they go, oh, I'm not sure I want to destroy. I'm like, well, try it and see if it makes you lighter. Because one of the other really basic tools of Access Consciousness is what's true makes you lighter, a lie makes you heavier. And so if it makes you lighter, then it's what's true for you. And so people in doing this, they realize, wow, I'm getting a lot lighter around this particular subject. I haven't had lightness around my family for years. I haven't had lightness around money for years. I haven't had lightness around my future and my relationships for years. And they start to realize there's this lightness because what we're doing is we're asking, will you destroy, meaning will you dismantle that wall that's in front of you? And will you uncreate, meaning will you take your creative energy out of creating walls now and use them instead to create possibilities? And so what happens is, one of the fundamental things that we need to get, we're the only ones with enough power to stop us. Us, only us. No matter who's in your life, no matter what abuse you've experienced, and I've experienced intense abuse when I was a kid and growing up, but no matter what you've experienced, we are the only ones with enough power to stop us. Because it's not what happens to us that determines our future and the course of our life. It's the choices we make based on what happens to us or based on the situations that we're in. And if we take that a little further, we realize nothing really happens to us, but that's probably a conversation beyond the scope of today, beyond the scope of today's conversation. But so what happens is, If you destroy the wall and then you take your creative energy out of building up the wall anymore, now you have space. Now with that space, what happens is, see, most people are walking on the road of their life, and they have been walking on the same path for so long, they have worn a rut that is so deep that they have walls to the left and right and they can't see anything else. And so what happens is, as you have this willingness to destroy a limited point of view, even if you don't remember what it was, and this is the beauty of it, you can just get the energy of it. It's one of the things I love about Access. You can just get the energy. You don't have to get cognitively what the point of view was. You just say, yes, I'm willing to change this. Will you destroy and uncreate it? We run this clearing statement, and then a piece of that wall goes away. But so once those walls go away, it's like you're no longer walking on that rut of your life. Now there's wide open space to create and to choose. And I think one reason people feel so stressed, or they feel so like there's lack of choice, why they feel compressed and contracted and cranky and is because they're compressed by the rut. They're compressed by the walls that have been created by the life as they have chosen it. And they don't even realize it. It just looks like life to them. And so as that starts to open up, people start to get a space and they're like, wow, it really can be what I knew it could be.
One of the main challenges I've experienced in that is even when you are ready to break those walls and people around you, especially your family, is not ready to do that, how do we deal with that? Because they expect you to co-suffer with them.
Yes. Here's what you do. You pretend to be as unhappy as they need you to be while secretly being happy. And what will happen is, see, the way our family works, the thing about families is, therefore I know it's very intense. You know what I mean? Because Indian families are an intense unit, right? And the difficulty is, if the whole family's here and they're like, this is our family and this is who we are in the world, you're expected to maintain that. You're expected to maintain the same walls and the same, this is our family is this castle and it's behind these walls and this is how we are. And yet there are a lot of people waking up right now going, this doesn't work for me, I want something different. The difficulty is, if you're in a family that primarily functions from the rightness of family and the wrongness of anything outside of that, like you said, how do you do this? Well, you want to recognize that you got to look at the things that they're going to make you wrong for if you choose them, and look at whether or not it's worth it to you to choose it anyway. And if it is, be willing to look how you can choose it without invalidating your family. Because a lot of times when we've been held down, quote unquote, by the family, or not allowed to be this or not allowed to be that, we want to get to us by rebelling against it. But that doesn't work. That's what teenagers do, you know what I mean? And at a certain point you realize resisting and reacting doesn't work. So a couple real simple, sorry, I apologize. I have ADD, ADHD, OCD, and autism, and they all, so there's always bright, shiny things that I want to say all the time. There's like 8,000 things in my head that want to be said. And sometimes I go on to the next one before this one is complete. What you want to do? So you want to look at this and go, okay, which of these are valuable enough to me to choose, even if it means my family has a problem with it? And then you look at, okay, so you have there may be 100 things you want to choose, and then you go, well, there's probably 10 that are really that vital to me. Okay, cool. Which of these can I choose on my own and have it be just for me, just for fun, never tell anyone? In other words, how can I choose this without necessarily having to let people know? And in that, how can I choose it without invalidating their point of view? Because when you live in any solid structure, whether it's a family, whether it's a church, whether it's a society, I mean, we have them all throughout the world. But any of those, if you try to go outside of it, they make you wrong because that's the way they hold it in place. Now, there are a lot of families at this point that are willing to let somebody choose something different and go, okay, I hope it works out for you, I love you. But there are a lot on the other side also. And so one thing that can help a lot is when you go into the resistance to the family's point of view, there's this great tool that we have in Access Consciousness. It's really simple to use. What you do is you get the energy of that yuck twistedness, and this can be around family, it can be around money, In fact, what I suggest people do is get wherever that yucky twistedness is in your world from some upset you've had in the last few weeks, get the energy of it and go, interesting point of view, I have this point of view. And usually it shifts even a little bit. And now whatever energy is there, you go, interesting point of view, I have this point of view. And usually it shifts again. And then you go, interesting point of view, I have this point of view. And usually within 3 to 10 times, the twist is gone. And the way that works is, see, we spend our lives aligning and agreeing and resisting and reacting. Aligning and agreeing is where you align with the rightness of something and you make it solid. And resisting and reacting is where you try to fight against it. And usually we resist and react to try to have us. You know, it's what teenagers do, they resist and react. But it doesn't work because it's not coming from a place of interesting point of view, which doesn't have positive, doesn't have negative, it just is. And once you bring this tool of interesting point of view to it, and you get out of the resistance and reaction and get out of the fight, what happens is you're like the rock in the stream, and all these thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, emotions, judgments, they come at you and they just go around you. And that's the place of true freedom. So I would say I know it's a very long-winded answer to that question, but I wanted to give some background on how this works because a lot of us are stuck in this, but we don't really realize what's going on. And just us getting aware of what's going on can be extremely helpful because then we come out of the wrongness of us because we keep thinking we're wrong for being different. No, my point of view is, and the question I ask people is, what if the difference that you are is the greatest gift that you are? And so if we can stop resisting and reacting to everything that's being put on us and thrown at us, then we have a totally different place from which to choose. Until then, we're not really choosing, we're choosing from resistance and we're choosing from reaction. And if anything you choose from reaction means that whatever you're reacting to is in charge, you're not. And so if we're truly going to get to being in charge of our lives in every area, we've got to get out of the resistance and reaction. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view, is an amazing way to do that.
I also, I remember one of your tools is about if it's true, it feels lighter, and if it's a lie, it feels heavier.
Yes.
What about the times when you're not getting anything? It's like a confused energy.
Yes. When it's a confused energy, what you want to do is you want to, so given that people have not had access to the clearing statement that we've spoken about, and by the way, if people want to get more info on the clearing statement, there's a website called theclearingstatement.com where I explain it. It's about a 20-minute explanation and give some examples of how to use it. But I want them to have that info so that they can explore it on their own. But if you don't have, see, what I would do is, if I'm getting confused, what I would do is I would go, okay, so everything that creates that confusion, I now destroy and uncreate it. And then I would run the clearing statement. And usually what happens is it starts to go away within about 3 times. And then you go, oh wow, I'm not as confused as I thought I was. How interesting. But so that's one tool or one way of going about it, probably the easiest and fastest way. But if you don't have access to this clearing statement, then we need to go to some other stuff. Okay, and what you want to recognize is anytime you're confused, you're lacking information. So you want to ask yourself, what information am I lacking here? Or what information have I bought as true that isn't? Because what happens is, like you said, what's true makes you lighter, a lie makes you heavier. And so you're looking at this going, okay, do I move here or do I not move here, as an example? And it's like, total confusion. Well, if you can get to the place where you go, okay, so what information am I lacking and what information have I bought as true and real that isn't? And what you'll start to realize is it would be so interesting. It would be such an interesting world if we were alone here, if we weren't picking up on everybody else's thoughts, feelings, emotions, but we're like a big psychic radio receiver. And so we're picking up, you walk into a room. I mean, have you ever walked into a room where somebody was sad and as soon as you open the door, you were hit with this wall of sadness? Or you are going to see a friend who's sad and as soon as you make contact with them, text or phone, you're like, Why am I so sad? What's going on? Well, it's not yours, but we're that aware. And so in the case of, for example, like moving or doing something different and you don't have a sense of lightness, part of that is because you're also aware of everybody else's points of view about it. It's not their awareness, it's their point of view. And people project their point of view really dynamically. And they're like, you should do this, and you should do this, and this is right, and this is wrong. And it's like, because it's all in your head, and it's all these energies in your head. Once again, what do you do about it? What information am I lacking? What information have I bought as true that isn't? And you just ask yourself that. And then you want to go, okay, so everybody else's projections, expectations, judgments, and points of view about this, I now destroy and uncreate it and return it to sender with consciousness attached. And that usually helps because it gets everybody else's stuff out of your head. But then the other thing is we have this tool, as I'm sure you know, a way of undoing all the monkey mind of everybody else's thoughts, feelings, and emotions, which is, who does this belong to? And what you want to do is, for every thought, feeling, and emotion, judgment, heaviness, energy, you go, who does this belong to? If it lightens up at all, it's not yours. You just return it to whoever it came from. You don't even have to know who they are. And this is really interesting because with a lot of the people that I've worked with, myself included, it's like I'll have a great day and I'll be driving down the road and all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, I feel sad. I'm like, wait a minute, I was just happy, what happened? But what happens is if you don't have this tool that 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions aren't yours, then you start looking for, why am I sad? And so you go back over your day, you're like, oh, I'm sad because somebody was lying to me, or I'm sad because of this. Well, what I found is you're driving down the road, somebody else is on the road with you that's sad, you pick up on that energy and then you think it's yours. Here's a way of changing it. You're driving down the road, doing okay. All of a sudden you get hit with sadness. Rather than going, oh my God, I feel sad, why am I sad? Because that locks it in. Now that you've said I feel sad, now it is yours. How did you get so lucky? That's awesome. Except it didn't come from you, so you can't change it. So what do? You go, who does that belong to? And if it lightens up at all, it's not yours, just return it to whoever it came from. If you'll ask, who does this belong to every thought, feeling, emotion, judgment, point of view you have for 3 days, and let go of the ones where it lightens up when you ask, at the end of 3 days, you walk around like a walking, talking meditation. And what's interesting is I used to meditate. I guess I should say I used to try to meditate. I don't know that I ever got very good at it. I got to somewhat this space where I could quiet my mind. But now, with having used Who Does This Belong To? And Access Consciousness bars, which is this 32 points on the head that gives you space and relaxation. Now I walk around with no thoughts in my head. I mean, we're in San Francisco right now, and I'm like, hi. So, it would be one thing if it just worked on me, but this has worked with hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And so that's why one of the big things for me is I want to give people tools because they're missing out there in the world. And most of them are really practical and really easy. Some of them, are a little more in-depth, but for the most part, it's pretty easy stuff. But what we're actually addressing is the energy of what's really going on. We're not buying a psychological point of view or a metaphysical point of view or a spiritual point of view, because unfortunately at this point, metaphysics, spirituality become like a new religion where, oh, well, my color of light is better than your color of light. I can't believe that you believe in blue light. My purple light is clearly superior. And I'm like, people, you got into this thing because you knew there was something different and greater that could bring more oneness to the world. And now you're doing exactly what everybody else does about how your point of view is superior. My point of view is take whatever works from everything that's out there and use it and let it contribute. We have a lot of people who come to Access Consciousness and they try to give up everything else. I'm like, why would you give up something else that's working for you? Just add this to it. Add it in the places where it'll make it greater and use it. And then the places where that doesn't work, then use that. You know what I mean? It's like we keep trying to exclude in our lives rather than include.
I'm glad you brought up about oneness, and I like that about your work. It's you kind of reinforce that we don't have to go to a forest and meditate to be able to do this work, and we can still live in like oneness and a kingdom of we. Can you elaborate more on that?
Absolutely.
What does it mean to be like one together in this, especially during these times where...
Especially during these times, because isn't it, you know, that Chinese proverb or curse, may you live in interesting times? Here we are, you know. But what I see is, as far as these times go, for me, my sense is a lot of the stuff that's occurring around the world right now is so that the people who truly have a capacity to make a different choice for themselves, that will actually, because we're all together on the planet, will make a different choice for our world, it's demanding that they wake up. They can no longer go, oh no, I'll get to it next year. You know, I'll choose some more consciousness next year. I think I got time. Now they're looking going, shit, I better do something because the world's gonna fall apart if I don't. You know, which I think is actually a gift in a lot of ways. But back to this oneness and kingdom of we conversation, my favorite way of describing oneness is where you're aware of yourself as the drop in the ocean while simultaneously being aware of yourself as the whole ocean. Simultaneously, you can hold both of those concepts in your world simultaneously. And if we had that, if we actually recognize that this is truly who we are, our birthright, if you will, you know, that this is actually true for us, then we would start looking at the world from a different place. Because right now, most people in the world are functioning from what I call the kingdom of me, which is, it's all about me. I better get mine before you get yours, because there's only so much. And rather than contributing to you, I will pretend to contribute to you while trying to get whatever I can from you. That's the kingdom of me. That's where so many people and so many different organizations, et cetera, are functioning but it's all based on lack and need. Would an infinite being truly have any lack? No, of course not. Would they have any need? No, they wouldn't have that either. Which is why I say we're so far from that. It's like even talking about it spins people's heads because they're like, oh yeah, infinite being. Yeah, right. No, it's actually true. And so rather than this kingdom of me, which is where you and I are separate, I've got my kingdom of me, you have your kingdom of me, what I would like to bring into the conversation is this idea that we are oneness. We're not just a drop in the ocean, separate, but we are the ocean together. And every element on the planet, every molecule has consciousness. So all of our molecules are already part of this oneness thing. It's just our points of view that separate it. And so what I would like to see is this kingdom of we, which is where everyone is included in our awareness, everyone is included in our choices, everyone is included in the creation of our future together, and we realize we're not separate, we're not alone, we're not wrong, we're not right, but we have an immense amount of choices available to us if we would receive the contribution that all of the elements of the kingdom of we, consciousness, oneness, they're all sort of synonymous. If we would receive the contribution that all of those elements are, we would have a completely different world with so much more peace, with so much more ease, with so much more joy, with so much more caring. But we keep acting like I'm alone over here in my kingdom of me, you're alone over there in your... So if we actually recognized and got the gift that it could be to function from this kingdom of we, there'd be a totally different way that we would function in the world. And one of the beautiful things that's really interesting to me is, because at the time of this filming, we're here in San Francisco where the fires are going all throughout Napa Valley and just, man, tons of them. That's one thing. And I just had my house flooded the first floor of the house flooded in Hurricane Harvey. And then we had Irma, and then we had Maria. It's like, whew, there have been a lot of interesting natural events that have been occurring. And we've had, earthquakes in Mexico. But one of the things that's so encouraging to me is, Texas is not known for its people coming together on a day-by-day basis. There's a lot of separation based on all kinds of things that we use to separate in this world, which is totally the kingdom of me. Okay, so like every element of racism, sexism, moneyism, every element of prejudice is the kingdom of me in action. But what I saw in Hurricane Harvey was it didn't matter what color you were, it didn't matter how poor, how rich, everybody came together to contribute to everybody else. That, I wish it didn't take a natural event like that to bring us together. It's something we could choose all the time. And if you went and spoke to some of the people that were formerly, let's say formerly racist as an example, that went and saved people of another color, and talked to them after that, and how was that for you? Like, wow, I can't believe I have been functioning this way for so long in this kingdom of me. It's so much greater to be the kingdom of we. And the thing about this and so many of the other conversations that we could have about possibilities is we keep looking at, wow, that would be theoretically wonderful, but what it really is about is the quality of our life and living right now. We have been sold by spiritual traditions and churches for tens of thousands of years that it's not about you living your life right now. What it's really about is the afterlife. My point of view, pardon my language, I hope I can say this on your show, fuck that shit. That is absolute bullshit. The idea that we're not supposed to live right now as great as we can because there's something greater after. Yeah, there's probably a lot of things that will occur after this lifetime. You probably have a lot of other lifetimes, at least, from my point of view. But to say that you shouldn't have and be every element of kindness and caring and generosity and connection and joy and possibilities and have everything you desire and contribute to other people having everything they desire in this lifetime is absolutely ridiculous. And so there's so many concepts and constructs that we just take for granted in this world that we don't even realize are running our lives. And one of the other things I love about Access is those start to go away. So for example, if you're working on, we've sort of gone all over the map on things you can work on: family, money, body, relationship, whatever. But let's say you're working on your relationship and you really would like to, let's say you have an enjoyable other and you'd like to make it greater. Well, a lot of the things that are limiting your points of view, limiting what is available in that relationship, are this baggage that you're carrying behind you that are all these points of view that are inherent to this reality that you don't even realize that you're carrying with you because you're a part of this reality. Well, okay, but what happens is, and one of the things I love about using these tools like the clearing statement and asking questions as another one, is that as you start, so let's say you're there, you really want to work on your stuff about relationships. So you start heading in that direction using the tools specifically for that. Well, at the same time, you're offloading all of these other points of view that you've been carrying with you that prevent ease with money, that prevent ease with your body, that prevent ease with your family, that prevent ease of creation. So it's this double whammy where as we undo these fixed points of view in whatever area we're trying to change, we also undo all these other fixed points of view that are really what's limiting us from having the life that we desire. And so it truly is possible to really enjoy being alive and to create whatever you desire and then have that grow into creating something even greater pretty much every single day. 17 years ago when I came to Access, it's like I couldn't afford rent. And my chiropractic office was so small. Nobody here can see what I'm pointing at, but it was tiny. And I couldn't afford rent easily on that and my house. It's like I kept struggling every month. And so one of the things I wanted to change was money and receiving. And it's like what I started realizing was it was the way that I had created my life based on the points of view that I had from my family that I was still carrying with me, based on the points of view that I had from my friends that I was still carrying with me, based on the points of view that I had from girlfriends that I was still carrying with me. And as they started to change, I started enjoying my life to a degree that I didn't think you could. And then it just keeps getting greater. But this is what I see with most of the people who use these tools. They start to enjoy their life more, and then it gets better and better and better. And one of the great tools you can use in Access Consciousness, we have this question: how does it get any better than this? You want to ask it when something good happens or when something bad happens. Because when something bad happens, it can get better. When something good happens, it can get even better than it just got if you'll ask the question, rather than going, oh, thank you, I got it. Go, thank you so much, how does it get any better than this?
How can we apply this knowledge at a planetary level, especially now that we are having so many catastrophes and there's so much chaos going on. How can we apply this so we don't get into the mentality of we have to save this planet?
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. The planet doesn't need saving. The people need saving if we're going to live here much longer, you know? I would say one of the biggest things, one of the biggest gifts is something we've already discussed, which is interesting point of view. I have this point of view. Because what happens is if you go into resistance and reaction to world events, if you go into resistance and reaction to our president and what he's choosing, if you go into resistance and reaction to some other world leader and what they're choosing, you lock it in place. So really, if you're gonna, and so that's that conversation. And then from my point of view, what it truly takes to create a different world is each of us truly choosing and creating our lives and getting out of the resistance and reaction and getting out of the idea that we can't create our lives and getting out of the idea that we have to do it like anybody else does. And so this idea of interesting point of view is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. So when you notice yourself resisting and reacting, going, I want to kill this part, I can't believe they're doing this. Go, okay, interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. And if you have the clearing statement available, you go, okay, so everything I've done to buy this and everything I'm doing to resist and react to it, I now destroy and uncreate it. And then you go, right and wrong, good and bad, POC and POD, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. That's the clearing statement, which takes too long to explain. But anyway.
So we are kind of contributing to our planet by detoxifying our own point of view.
Exactly. Part of the greatest gift that we can be. And also we need to realize that, you know, really, it's like, if not us, whom? And if not now, when? How much longer are we going to wait to recognize we're all on this planet together and to stop believing that the voices that scream the loudest and the people that hate the most are the ones that have the power? They don't. There is more power in your pinky than there is in their entire body. But we have to be the ones to recognize that. And another note on power is, in Access we don't talk so much about your power, you know, claim your power and that, because what we'd rather have you have access to is your potency. What's the distinction? Well, power in this reality is pretty much power over somebody else. If you have more guns, if you're stronger, if you're meaner, if you hate more, if you judge more, then you have power here. That's not true power. There's a potency that consciousness is. There's a potency in kindness. There's a potency in generosity. There's a potency in having no point of view and not resisting and reacting. All of those potencies allow you to change the world. Well, in order to change the world, because a lot of us look out and go, oh, I'd like to change the world. No, it has to start with us. It has to start with, look, I am actually being effective in changing my life, in actually creating a life that I desire. And I am bringing more kindness, I'm bringing more generosity, more gentleness. I'm bringing more awareness of possibilities to the world. And from there, we can actually be this, which truly creates a change in the world. But we've got to recognize that we have the potency to do it, and potency is the capacity to create change. And if you're living in your life right now and you're like, I'm suffering my life, I haven't been able to change it yet, I'm going to say there's a few things going on. One is you maybe just haven't been given the right tools to actually address what's really going on. You've been trying to fight against what isn't working rather than choose what could work.
And your book offers some really good starters to make those changes happen.
Thank you. That's why I wrote it. I wanted people to have something that would actually change, you know, it's called Being a Change in the World, because I wanted them to get to actually be them and actually realize the world can change, their world and ours, you know? And before I wrote that book, the reason I wrote it was because when I came to Access, there wasn't a set of tools that was right together. It's like I had to find them, you know? And I was like, wouldn't it be easier for other people if they didn't have to go searching so long, and you know?
Yeah, for me, as I told you before, it gave me a language to for the concepts that were on my mind, it gave me a language on how to express and that makes a big difference when you actually can talk about it instead of just.
Yeah. And instead of also thinking you're the only crazy one with those thoughts in your head, and that's the other thing is, those of us that are the seekers in the world, here's the way it works. We always think we're wrong, and I've realized there seem to be two different species on the planet, the cow people and the horse people. And the cow people are fine doing the same thing every single day, never needing to change it. Huh. We have a very active horn out there. I said cow people, the horn went on. And if you realize that, and those people always have the point of view that they're right, and if you do anything different outside of the box or outside of the norm, then you're wrong. And their job is to judge you and tell you how wrong you are. And it's funny because we horse people, the seekers of the world, the people that are looking for something different, and I've always wanted to see a kinder world, it's like the horse people always make themselves wrong. And so it's this interesting thing where you have the cow people making you wrong, and you have you making you wrong. So when they make you wrong, you're like, of course, I'm wrong. Well, it's those people that are actually here to change the world. But we have to get over the wrongness of us in order to do it. Otherwise, we're going to continue to sit in the wrongness of everything we choose, rather than recognizing that the difference of us and the things we're being judged for are probably actually the greatness of us. The way I like to say it is, what if everything you thought were a wrongness of you is actually a strongness of you? But we have to be willing to be the ones to get there, to actually see it, to actually choose it.
And one of the tunes I really liked along those lines is when you accept it's okay to be wrong.
Yes.
It took off such a big load off of my shoulder when it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to be wrong.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
Where you're like, wow. And also, it's great because if you've ever done something in a relationship where you did something and you feel bad about it, you just go to the person and you go, you know what, I'm really sorry. I was wrong. What can I do to make up for the damage done? And it changes the whole relationship. But that willingness to be wrong, and if we no longer had to be right anymore, God, what freedom. And I freely tell people, I say, I have chosen more things and screwed them up and been wrong. I've been wrong on more things than most people have ever chosen. Why? Because I'm willing to be wrong. I don't care. It's like, because the other thing is, if you choose something and it doesn't work out well, at least you get awareness from it. And you know what? You don't want to choose in the future. So is there really any wrong choice, or does every choice create more awareness? And if you're interested in consciousness, and we have a definition of consciousness in Access Consciousness, which is where everything exists and nothing is judged. Wouldn't it be a great world if everything and everyone existed and nobody was judging anyone or anything? From my point of view, judgment is one of the biggest killers there is. And this thing about being wrong is one of the greatest judgments we use against ourselves. If we could stop that, we could change the world.
How do you differentiate between judging and being aware?
Judging always has a heaviness to it. Being aware always has a lightness. Now here's the interesting part that confuses most people. We have this idea that if we see a limitation that somebody's choosing, then we're judging. So for example, if we see somebody that is selfish, and we go, oh, well, I can't say they're selfish because then I'm judging. No, that's just an acknowledgement of where they're choosing to function. It's their choice. You acknowledging it doesn't stick them with it. They're already choosing it. Or you see somebody who's mean, and it's like, wow, they're mean. Okay, cool. Now, the great part about that is, if you see that somebody's mean, or you see that somebody's judgmental, or you see that somebody's selfish, and you just acknowledge it, you're like, cool. Now you know what you're dealing with. Now you interact with them appropriately. What most people do is they know somebody is selfish, they've already seen it, they're already aware of it, and they go, oh, I'm judging, so I can't have that judgment. So they put that awareness out here, and now the person is continuously selfish with them, and trying to take things, I don't know, maybe trying to steal things, or always trying to get it working out for them instead of the other person. And this person sitting here who had the awareness, who decided it was a judgment, so now they won't allow themselves to see the person as selfish, is continually the effect of this selfish person. If they realize that negative awareness is not judgment. In other words, and I wouldn't even call it negative actually, That's what most people call it. But awareness of limitation is not judgment. It's actually awareness. So it has a lightness to it. So you can look and go, oh, that person is selfish. Okay, cool. No point of view. If you're judging them and going, oh, I hate the fact that they're so selfish, that's a judgment. That has a heaviness to it. And the other thing is we keep having this idea that anything we think that's positive about somebody is not a judgment. That's an awareness. No, absolutely not true. Okay, so it works both ways. And so when we have this idea that anything we think is positive about them is good and anything we think is negative about them is bad, no, you have to see, okay, is this lighter or heavier when I think about this person this way? Like, for example, when I was engaged 17 years ago, I had the judgment that she was perfect, which means, and the way judgment works is for any judgment you have, nothing that doesn't match that judgment can come into your awareness. So because I judged her as perfect, I couldn't see that she had been cheating on me. I couldn't see that she actually didn't really like me. I couldn't see that the only reason she was with me was because I was a chiropractor, even though at one point she said, you know, you're a chiropractor and I guess that's good enough for me, although I wish you were a real doctor. She literally said that to me. And I, because I judged that she was perfect, couldn't even see that she was totally invalidating who I was. So this is what judgment does. It kills us because we can't see what's actually occurring. And literally, we can't see when somebody invalidates us if we decide that they're perfect. And one of the other things that happens a lot in all kinds of self-development circles is we decide somebody who's been around longer is greater than us. Or, especially in metaphysics and spirituality, we have people telling us, I can see, oh my God, your energy is so intense. Wow, I see a red dragon around you. Oh, you have ancestors that have been there for 5,000 years. And they do this significant shit to do superiority on us, and we buy it. No, nobody knows more about you and your life than you do. Nobody is greater than you. And anybody who tells you they are, they're trying to prove that they're greater than you because secretly they're insecure. Because people always try to prove the opposite of what they believe they are. So when they're insecure, they'll try to prove that they're greater than you by proving that they can see energies you can't and all this stuff. And the appropriate response when somebody does that is this.
I did experience that, especially doing this project where people expect you to kind of worship them in a way. And the more they did that, the more I felt like I want to go away.
Yeah. Exactly.
It works the other way around.
And that's appropriate. That is as it should be. You know, when somebody expects you to worship them, it's like that's coming from a deep-seated need in their world that has nothing to do with anybody else. And, you know, for me, I want playmates. I hate followers. You know, in other words, people who are like, oh, you're great and I'm not. I'm like, oh. There's nothing that frustrates me more. Well, pretty much nothing that frustrates me more, you know, because for me, I want to see people who are willing to go, okay, man, I'm willing to be as great as I am, you know, because that creates a greater possibility for the world. People who need to see somebody else as great, or people who need to prove that they're better than other people, that's the same world we already live in that sucks for all of us. Let's do something different. That's a lot more fun. Let's play.
You have mentioned some good pointers on how to be a leader. What do you consider a good leader?
So for me, a leader is not somebody who needs followers. A leader is somebody who knows where they need to go and will go no matter who says they shouldn't if they know they need to go. And it's interesting because, you know, Richard Branson, great leader in business. And if you've researched him at all, it's like he knows where he needs to go. And even when he was told, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, blah, 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 he went anyway. Did he fail several times? Yes. Did he keep going? Yes. And that's the other mark of a leader. They never stop. No matter how many setbacks they get, they never stop. And that, for me, is the mark of a great leader. The other thing that a leader is somebody who empowers other people, who actually desires to see them be as great as they are, not who needs to be put on a pedestal so they can feel superior. So different qualities and characteristics perhaps than other people see as a leader, but for me, this is what I've come to realize is a true leader from my point of view.
And you also mentioned about how to be those qualities instead of trying to earn those qualities.
Yes. Well, I think a lot of it is actually acknowledging us, acknowledging who we truly are, and also offloading that baggage like I was talking about before. And it's like, especially those of us that are the horse people. By the way, the horse people, I would call them humanoids, because they're a bunch of different weirdos walking around. By the way, the original meaning of weird is of spirit, fate, or destiny. So when somebody says you're weird, go, awesome, thank you. I do that. People go, you're weird. I'm like, thank you. They're like, it wasn't a compliment. I'm like, actually, to me it was. Thank you. And I considered the source, therefore it's a double compliment. But if we started actually recognizing that a lot of the thing that we have been doing that's been limiting us is seeing ourselves as wrong. And if we could just change that one thing, then we would actually start to be the leaders that we have had the capacity to be that we haven't acknowledged. One of the things that's really encouraging to me is we have a lot of kids who come to Access. And it's interesting because I was actually in India doing a Symphony of Possibilities class. And this 12-year-old girl raised her hand and talked about being bullied. And then several other of the girls in the class, and these are all horse people, okay? These are all seekers in the world. And several other girls of her age raised their hands and went, yeah, we're getting bullied too. And what I talked to them about was, okay, so what potency do you have that you're not acknowledging? And are people scared of you? Because that's when bullies act out. A lot of times actually when they're scared of the person that they're bullying. And so in working with them in an hour-long conversation with these 3 girls, it changed everything for them. The bullying totally stopped. So it's a case of them claiming and owning and being able to be the leader that they are by acknowledging who they really are. And I think we could all do that. It's just most of us haven't been given the chance or been invited to it.
I know you travel a lot doing the Access Consciousness. What are the similarities and differences you have noticed among different countries?
Oh my goodness, there are so many of both. But I would say for me, the similarities in the people I get to work with is that they're asking for and desiring something different. They're willing to have courage to buck the system as it is. And they're willing to actually start being more of a leader in their lives. And this is such an amazing gift to see. And the other thing is, there's this commonality in a lot of them looking at what is and going, it's not enough. We need something different. You know, whether that's Europe or India or Australia or New Zealand or the United States or Canada or wherever else we've been lately, which I can't even remember. It's like all of them are like, look, what is not enough. There has to be something different. There has to be something greater. And I think that is one of the big commonalities. And then the other thing is, as far as the differences, you know, we have so many cultural differences. Like in India, family is huge, religion is huge if it's there, gurus, you know, and guru worship and making someone up here is huge. But all the people that come to the classes that I facilitate are like, look, I realize this is part of my life. How do I create something even greater without invalidating the people in my life? And how do I create something greater that will actually contribute to everybody even more? And so, you know, in Europe, it's like thousands of years of tradition that you're supposed to follow that's huge. In the United States, it's every man for himself, and we can sort of do anything, but that was a few hundred years ago, so now let me sit back and watch reality TV, and you give me everything. You know, and yes, you know, so it's interesting to see the difference in the level of different people and how much they actually desire change. You know, in the US, most people just want to get this right or this right, and then, you know, they've had enough. The sense of adventure has sort of died here, unfortunately. I would like to rekindle it, because it's not that we don't have the capacity, it's that we, are swimming in the soup of everything around us. It'd be so cool if we got to have a sense of adventure in life and living again and realize we could create whatever we wanted, create something totally different, create something that's never existed before, and actually create from a space of truly enjoying creation, which we've sort of gotten away from, unfortunately. Now, once again, these are all just my observations on the world. Might be true, it might not. Once again, everything I say should be an interesting point of view too. And if something I say makes you lighter, it's probably true for you. And if it makes you heavier, it's probably a lie.
What's your world vision on where do you think this is all leading towards?
Well, I, have taught myself over many years to start to perceive futures, because the future is an energy, it isn't here yet. And a lot of us try to see the future as a solidity, and I don't sense that it works that way until you get closer to it and more people are choosing a particular thing. I see a lot of possibilities for truly creating a world where we truly function from oneness and consciousness. I also see these possibilities for where the insane idiots of the world, in essence, have more sway than those people choosing consciousness. And I would love to predict the future, but I don't know that that is within my purview. I have my own ideas of where things are going, and I also perceive as they shift at different times. My personal point of view is the earth right now is doing everything it can to get us to wake the fuck up. And we are doing everything we can to try to pretend that we can just do the same thing over and over again, and our lives will be fine. And I don't think that's exactly how it happens. So my sense is the more people are willing to choose consciousness, which is where everything exists and nothing is judged, the more they're willing to get to interesting point of view, the more they're willing to start to realize that their questions about life can open up different possibilities, and that they actually have choice, so they don't have to suffer what they've been suffering. I think a lot of people will start to create dynamically different lives, and my sense is, I truly actually do have a sense of hope for the fact. So for me, I personally have a sense of hope about the future. My sense is that there's enough going on in the world right now that is forcing people to look from a different place. And I'm encouraged by things like what happened during Hurricane Harvey, where people just came in to help no matter what. And what I would, so it's like, but what the world is going to choose is up to all of us in the world. And what I would ask people to do is to look at the future. If you could choose anything as the future, if you could have anything as your future personally, and in your life and with your family, don't try to define it like, oh, I have a house on the beach, blah, blah. Just get the energy of it and get the space of it. And if we truly together could create any future as our world, what would you choose? Because we're not looking from the place of, what would I choose for the world? And no, the choice is not up to you, but with enough of us actually choosing a conscious world, perhaps a world without judgment, a world based on possibilities, a world where we walk together arm in arm, creating together from the kingdom of we. With enough of us interested in it, we will create it, because we have the power, we have the potency to do it. We just keep pretending that we don't. And the more of us that are willing to actually open up to that possibility for future, the more the world will head in that direction. And so what I want to let people know is, guys, it's up to you. It's up to us together. Stop disconnecting yourself from being part of the equation.
That's a very insightful message to end this video on. I think we have a lot to think about, especially during this time, and I feel like the message you just shared will open up the doors for that.
Thank you. And thank you for making this available and possible. And thank you for the awareness you're bringing to people.
Thank you. And for people who want to find out more about you, would they go to your personal website, or should they go to the Access Conscious?
Either one. So my website is drdainheer.com, and there's free videos that are on there because I wanted to pay it forward what I've gotten from Access Consciousness. And I also realize there are people who, have financial stuff going on and they can't necessarily, even buying a book for some people is a stretch. And it's like, I've got over 300, I think it's 300 now, videos on YouTube that have different tools that people can use. Please go there and use them. They're free. Also, you can go to the main Access website, accessconsciousness.com. There's so many resources that we have available, from books to audios to videos to classes to live stream classes. And it's all designed to contribute to you in actually creating the life you desire. And by extension, when your life gets greater, so does our world.
Thank you, Dain.
Thank you, Suma.